purpose of this video. It is to show a highly focused and functioning PLC and what it looks like. You will be introduced to evidence, inference, and activate model.
PLCs should have a shared vision with collective efficacy throughout the district, throughout the schools, and throughout departments.
Marion County Public Schools is a district that focuses on continuous improvements for all students and for reflective practices.
We would like to define a professional learning community. It is a shared collective commitment among a group of educators focused on relentless improvements of student learning.
And some key words that stand out when we think of this definition are shared, which means everyone gives their input, commitment, dedicated effort and time, improvement, seeking new ways to get better results, student learning, which is data-driven and individualized. Our PLCs will focus on evidence, inference, activate model. The first part of the definition for highly effective PLCs is the evidence of instruction. So when thinking about instruction, your driving question always should be, what do we want students to learn?
And then from there, you need a shared vision. So when looking at your CSIP, what are the big rocks? For example, Calvary Elementary is focusing on reading this year. So from there we think, well, what do we want students to learn? We need to use our standards, our success criteria, and learning targets to determine that.
And then once we know what they're going to learn, how are we going to teach that to them? We're working in these groups to determine what strategies are we going to use? What differentiated instruction do we need? What technology might we use? What resources do we need that we don't have or that we can pull from different parts of the district? What professional learning do we need to grow and improve ourselves as educators? Book studies, instructional coach help, or other PDs.
And remember, a highly functioning PLC is when all members contribute to meeting common goals and the shared vision.
Another important part of evidence is assessment, and that's going to answer how do we know that they've learned it, and we use several types of assessment data to figure that out. We use SRI, MAP, common assessments, benchmark assessments, DRAs, and student work samples to drive our instruction and determine next step for individual students.
And these discussions regarding our data lead to student placement and RTI, student groupings, and help determine common misconceptions and what we need to do to reteach our students the different misconceptions that they may have encountered. For example, classroom teachers meet with RTI PLCs and determine where student placement is in the RTI.
Also, when we meet at our grade level PLCs, we are able to identify common misconceptions from benchmark assessment, common assessments, and determine best practices for what needs to be retaught. For example, I may have, in my class, had kids that did really well on a question, and we would share what instructional strategies I used for that, and vice versa with other concepts.
The second part is what we can infer from assessment data. This allows me to analyze student misconceptions. It lets me know what my kids know and what they don't know. It allows us to adjust instruction to meet those misconceptions. So for the kid that thinks hungry is still one of the 5 senses, we can work together and address that.
By analyzing test data, it not only allows me to see what my students know, but it also allows me to see how I did as their teacher. I am notorious for changing my lesson plans from period to period, and sometimes that will cause an impact on my instruction.
I have had experience with teacher collaboration through TCTs. During through course tasks, I was able to ask questions of my fellow teachers and to improve my grading accuracy and develop more student feedback.
Now it's time to activate, and for teachers this can be the hardest part because we know we have A, B, and C to teach this school year and so many days to get that accomplished, and so we feel that time crunch, that pressure to get things done, to move on. but sometimes we're not ready to move on, and there's some important questions that we need to ask ourselves in this process.
All right, so you've looked at the data. What are you going to do for the students who didn't learn the content?
We got to look at a spiral review, going back over stuff that they have struggled in the past and how do we revisit that. For example, using Flashback Fridays and quick quads, using the data to come up with those questions that the students can go back over. Also, I think we need to get creative with our resources, using other educators to find what strategies work, what can we do differently, what old things work that help our students with those things that they're just struggling on.
Okay, so we're all learning from each other.
Right.
All right, so you've looked at the data again, and you know that the students really got this. What are you going to do to enrich the students?
We can use small group instruction and really focus that on student needs. Looking ahead, we can use pre-assessment data and see where the students are in the learning. Finally, we can plan a more rigorous activity that challenges the students, but wait till and make sure they're ready for that challenge.
All right, sounds good.
In conclusion, each school team must have a focused PLC where the emphasis is on continuous school improvement.
It's just so important to make sure this is a collective commitment among all team members, using that process of looking at our evidence, inferencing how best to reach our learners, and activating our next steps.